and I will introduce Jason, our activity manager, to start the meeting.
Well, good morning, everyone. Glad everyone was able to make it in. Today, like Jim mentioned, we're going to start off the club meeting today with our actual presentation instead of doing it at the end and trying to squeeze it in. Jim was able to diligently work with Dr. Bob to actually, Dr. Bob Heil, to get a presentation together and have us join us this club meeting. So we're excited to have him here, and like some of the folks had mentioned, we'll have this recording posted at all the usual places online for folks who couldn't make it or who would like to review the information again. I'll hand it back off to Jim, since Jim and Dr. Bob have been working together. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you and mute myself.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Dr. Bob Heil, K9EID, and I'll just read his bio that he sent to us. Bob Heil, licensed in 1956 as Kilo November 9 Echo India Delta, began his entrance into the amateur radio as an avid experimenter and builder of VHF equipment. Heil became very involved in designing and building equipment. He was one of the first kilowatt 6 and 2 meter SSB stations in 1958. As a professional theater pipe organist at the St. Louis Fox Theater, he learned to voice and tune massive Wurlitzer theater organs, which taught him how to listen, mentally dissect what he heard. That and his equipment building skills learned from ham radio was the foundation for his career in building the first large arena sound systems for such artists as Joe Walsh, The Who, Grateful Dead, Peter Frampton. Heil Sound is the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In 1980, Heil turned his focus on designing more articulate microphones, headsets, and audio gear for amateur radio, commercial broadcast, and live concert stages. Heil continues to bring new technologies to the industry and is constantly designing new and exciting microphone products for the industry. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Bob Heil. Dr. Bob, you have the floor.
Jim, you may want to mute the phone call.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Bob. Oh, hang on.
Maybe we can unmute him.
Hang on, let me. Dr. Bob. I'm double checking if he's
just sitting down at the mic.
Oh.
He's talking, but I don't hear.
We see it, but we can't hear you, Dr. Bob.
Yeah. Sometimes when you, there we go.
There we go. Great.
Sometimes when it's unmuted, it's not unmuted, but you probably know all about that. Well, it's really good to be here. And I saw some of the check-ins, and looks like you have a very active and live club. And that's what I love. Clubs are the lifeline of this hobby. And I'm doing about 2 and 3 of these a week, and I just love it because it's bringing the clubs actually closer together, although we're not close together, but it really makes it great. And I like to share the science of this hobby. uh, we don't get enough education. I've always been screaming about that to the participants that's supposed to be doing it, and so I started doing these several years ago, but now it's really grown, and I appreciate you letting me come to your meeting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a little bit of history, just something that you'll be interested to know where I come from and how come I'm supposed to be here. It did a little bit of fun too, but we're going to get into some very serious science, great demos and stuff that I know will make your station better. My whole life started when I was 12 years old. My parents were not wealthy people, but they bought me a Hammond organ B3, and I started teaching myself by listening to George Wright records, theater organist. And 2 years later, I got a job in a restaurant. I was 14, playing on the weekends, and I'm doing various ladies' meetings and Lions Club and stuff like that, making a lot of money, more than my teachers actually. And I was only 14, got a driver's license at 15, and became the organist at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. And what's so important for me to bring that to you is that that organ had not been played in 20 years. And the organist there that started putting it back together was Stan Can. And he got me not only to be the substitute for him, but the most important thing that changed my life and maybe some of yours is that we had to voice and tune about 4,000 pipes from 1 inch to 32 foot. Now, tuning is no big deal. Voicing, oh my. You have to mentally dissect what the harmonics are, what you're hearing, how they come together or not. And I didn't realize, of course, that later in my life it would be the backbone of 2 of my careers, and all because of that crazy pipe organ, which I'm still playing. There was my first station in 1956, a Harvey Wells SX99. That big box on the right, that's a VHF converter from RME, because I became a technician for 17 years. What happened was when I got into ham radio, it was the start of the largest sunspot cycle ever. And if you were around, you'll be shaking your head and agreeing. It was amazing. 2 meters were like 75 meters. They were open every day, every night. It was incredible. And I really got into building quite early. That little box at the left, gosh darn it, you can see the meter of it. I'll have just a little better picture, but I built a 6-meter transmitter with a 2E26 and just got fascinated with all this stuff. Very, very quickly, the station grew the next year. GARCIA had come on the scene. That's a GARCIA communicator and a 300-watt linear. There you'll see on the left of that a little bit a better picture of the homebrew that I had built. The black box is an ARC-5 transmitter from a B-29. And it was a really cool thing in those days. After the war, there just were scads of electronic gear from the war. And you could get those things for $5. And everything was crystal controlled then. But I took that VFO or that ARC-5 and turned it into a VFO because it was 8 megacycles, or 5 to 9 megacycles, and hey, I made it a VFO. So those are the things that really helped me go. But one night, I'm on the air. Now we're on AM, understand. Single sideband, it just kind of like squeaked into the 20 meters. One night I'm on the air on 6 meters, and I heard this raucous signal. Oh, it was terrible. His audio was awful. I couldn't understand what's going on here. So I answered the guy. Now I understand in those days, crystal controlled, I wouldn't be on his frequency. So you have to look. And yet today, a lot of us old codgers, you'll hear us call CQ in our call, and then we'll say, and tuning, because maybe somebody's going to answer you with their crystal up the band. Of course, today we have transceivers, and that was a different deal. Well, anyway, I called the guy, and he came back to me, and he was just so elated. He said, I can't get anybody to answer me. I'm on single sideband. And I'm going, whoa, on 6 meters? Yeah. And so every night I would meet with this guy at his frequency and my crystal frequency. He was building one of the first single sideband transmitters on 6 meters. And we got to talking, and I told him I'd come to St. Louis 2 or 3 times a week to play at the Fox. What happened there, we'd play for 8 minutes for the intermission, and then we'd go down in the pit, and the movie had come on for about 2 or 3 hours. So I had some time. He said, why don't you come and visit me? You understand, in amateur radio, you don't know who people are or what they do or what they look like. I rolled up in front of the address he gave me, and it was KMOX radio. And this little kid, I was 16, I go in there, and I asked for Larry because I didn't know his last name. And the receptionist said, oh, Larry, well, we have a couple of them. I said, well, he's a ham radio. Oh, I didn't get it out of my mouth. Oh, you want our engineer, Larry Burrows. Out comes this guy, 3-piece suit, tie, impeccably dressed. That's the way we dressed in those days. The engineers especially, believe it or not. Well, I got a tour of the place, and we talked. I said, would you build me one of those transmitters? It's really cool. He said, no, I can't do that. And I said, well, you built yours. I know that, but I'm going to teach you how to build it. And he did. And that was the beginning of an incredible life of ham radio. There's a picture in the bottom of the station that grew to 50. I mean, every year just going crazy, but I was making a lot of money playing, and I bought all this gear. My parents were so loving it. They didn't care. I was doing things. And how we did that, Central Electronics brought single sideband ham radio in 1948. A lot of people, if you went into a trivia contest, would say it was Art Collins. Nope. He came 6 years later. After he bought one of these transmitters and tried to put it together and couldn't get it to work, and called Wes Shum, who owned Central Electronics, and working through the kit. I thought that was always funny. Anyway, it was a plug-in coils. So I learned to use a grid dip meter, and we wound the 50 megacycle coil. Okay. And we're on 20 meters. Well, how do we get to 6 meters? Larry taught me how to build a 6U8 oscillator that would give us 36 megacycles. We had to wind a coil for it. We plug it in where the crystal went, 36 and 14. What do you got? 50 megacycles. Now, this is 1958. I didn't really know what the outside was doing yet. I'm a young kid and just starting. And the station just kept growing and growing. You'll see that Central Electronics there in the lower corner, and the 300-watt amplifier and all that. And the NC300, which is still over here on my right. Anyway, I got into antennas big time. And Telerex had come out with a spiral array. It was a 36-foot boom, 11 elements on 6 meters, but they weren't horizontal and they weren't vertical. And I was fascinated by that. Wow. Wonder what's all the deal about. Well, the deal was signals will leave your horizontal antenna, but they may not end up, and they probably don't end up horizontal to the receiver, because the signals, they change polarity. You know, when you're listening to a station and it gets real distorted and you couldn't hardly hear, and then it come right back. It's phase distortion. And Telerex thought maybe we can help a little, and they did. That antenna really worked good. I had these loving, loving parents that allowed me to do about anything. I put up a 110-foot Roan, and I had one of the spiral arrays up, and that was great. It was just an amazing thing. I put up a 48 elements on 432, but I didn't have that up long. I didn't go for that one. 6 meters and 2 meters. That was my home. And it's hard to see there in that picture, but you can see how the driven element's almost vertical. But anyway, that was an incredible process of getting all that together. And I just can't tell you how incredible those things were for me as a young kid. I got into 2 meters also, and we put up a pair of 35 foot long 2 meter antennas, one vertical and one horizontal. What I was doing there was playing with phasing. That's a subject that we all hear a lot, but I think after about the hour you've spent with me, you're going to understand it, because I have some fantastic demonstrations of that. It affects everything we do. But then I really got crazy. I built a 6 and 2 Thunderbolt, which gave me about 1.5 kilowatts on 6 and 2 meters. You see the single sideband transmitter up there that we had built. I never listened below 50 megacycles. This was 1959. One day I get a call, and it was Bob Drake from the Drake Company. He said, "Are you the guy that's got a 6 meter sideband station?" And I said, "Yes." I learned then that I was only one of 10 or 12 people that have done that. So I'm going, wait a minute. He said, "Well, I would like to invite you to our club meeting. We do this once a year. It's a technical meeting, and we invite all of the companies to come and give us papers on what they're doing. And we would love to have you come and explain how you did this." I said, "Well, I did it, but really it's K0DGE. And see if," well, he said, "Bring him along." Well, unfortunately, he couldn't get away from CBS that weekend. I had a friend of mine that I had met on 6 meters that had a bonanza. He said, "I've heard about that meeting they have once a year. Let's fly out there." So here we go. We get in that bonanza, and he's got a KWM2 in the dash with a trailing wire antenna. Oh man, you talk about fun. Oh, well, come on. Who tells me ham radio is boring? Oh, no. Stuff like that. Well, we go. Where'd we go? We went to Dayton, Ohio, to the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Dayton. What they had done, they'd taken all the furniture out one of the floors, and they had company. They had the Collins room, the Allicrafter room, the Westsham and his Central Electronics, the Drake room, the Telerex, Mosley, all these great companies. Man, they were like movie stars to me, because I was reading about these guys in the magazines, QSD and CQ. Wow, this was very cool. And I gave my presentation, and like, wow, that was the first of the Dayton Hamvention. They would do this once a year. And they did it through 1964 when they moved it to the Hare Arena that just sadly got demolished. Anyway, the interesting part of that whole deal is that Dayton at that time had 600 people there, 600. And it grew a little bit, didn't it? But anyway, I kept going. But while I was there, I had a guy from the UK say, "Hey, we need you." He said, "We've got an antenna and we need somebody to test it." We're in the UK, the J-Beam company. So they sent it over, and in a spare lot next to our house, Parents had quite a large home, and that 110 footer was over there. But we put up this 50 footer and put up this wonderful 128 element 2-meter array above my head, kind of hard to see, but there's 2 prop pitch motors from a B-29. That's what we rotated things with in those days because we could get them cheap. Go to the surplus store, away you went. And that I also could point it to the moon, and that's what the test was. We were doing moon bounce, and it was just something that you can't describe the thrill that I had as a young kid, being in the midst of all these great engineers. And it's what really built my whole life from that. I barely got out of high school. I only went the required days because I was playing. I was making money. I didn't need that education. I thought I didn't, but I did okay. Sometimes my English didn't just right, but it's okay. Anyway, I just was mesmerized by all of this electronics. It was just things that I can't describe other than what I'm telling you here. It was an amazing time. And that's why I try to bring some of this, because hopefully some of the younger guys and gals will also pick up on some of it. Ham radio is a great educator, I can tell you that. Well, I'd been playing for about 12 years, 6 nights a week, and getting home at midnight. It was really cool because the bands are open all the time. So when I get home, get on 6 meters and work the world. So that was kind of cool. But I got tired of that. And my playing was also a great educator. That center picture, I'd taken a B3. I took 2 of them and built a 3 manual B3. The xylophone or marimba that you see sitting beside it. I went to a pinball machine company and bought a whole bunch of the solenoid that rang the bell. And I put under each one of those bars, and the piano, same thing, the drums, the maracas and cymbals, they were all driven by these 24-volt solenoids. And they were all keyed from the organ, just as the theater organ does. Only the theater organ, as you see up in the right, that's the Fox console. That allows us to be an orchestra, and that, you know, we could spend a whole 2 hours on that one. But I'm still playing and having fun, of course. Voicing those pipes were just it just undescribable what it did for me to learn to listen. There's not a lot of people listen. They hear, but they don't listen. Hearing is a process, it's a physical process. Mental process is listening. We're going to get into that because you're going to listen. You're going to learn how to listen if you don't. Got some great things coming up for you. What I did, I got tired of playing. I opened a little music shop in Marissa, Illinois. That's where I grew up. My parents had a shoe store. You see my dad down there sticking his head out the door. I didn't see this on the picture till years later, but I opened this store and I became a Hammond organ dealer. And being a crazy guy, had a soldering iron. I was the first guy to cut them in half and make them portable because a B3 weighed 300 pounds, had legs and all that. And the groups wanted to be able to carry it around. So I love doing all this kind of stuff. And one day, a guy comes into me, and he had an amplifier. It was a guitar amp. I'd never seen one. Can you believe that? And he said, you fix things here at your music shop, right? I said, well, yeah, what do you got? He said, oh, my amplifier. It's my guitar amp, and it blew up. I figured, he probably made it go to 12, and it only went to 10. So being a ham, I turned it upside down. What's in it? Pair of 6L6s and a 5U4. That was the modulator in my Harvey Wells, which, by the way, gosh, I don't think you can see that. No, I still have it over here. Let me get the other camera turned on here. You can see that's all my vintage stuff. I've had some of that since the 50s. I can't see the Harveys very well. He's down beneath. But anyway, that's where I am every morning on AM with that stuff. Anyway, I got this kid going in about 15 minutes. He was mesmerized. He said, whoa, you didn't even have one of them schematic things. No, I didn't need a schematic because I knew the circuit well. And all of a sudden, the world found out. I started getting all kinds of people, especially in the Midwest. REO Speedwagon. Michael McDonald was in high school there. Danny Fogelberg. They would come to me and drive hundreds of miles because the word was out that there's this little crazy guy that's got a soldering iron. Okay. And that really started it. Well, one day I get a call from the Fox, and it was George Bales, the guy that was the stage manager that used to push the button to bring the console out of the pit when I was 15, 16 years old. I wasn't big enough to reach up and hit that button, so he would do it. Anyway, he called me. He says, Heil, I got some speakers. We're throwing them out, and you might want them. We're putting in a new sound system here at the Fox. So I go up there. Oh, my gosh. These are Olsen bins. They're A4 Altex, all kinds of big speakers. We're talking 8 and 10 foot. So I go up there. What I find? All of these things. The two on the left are the ones. So I took them back to Marissa, and I built some other things. We had a fiberglass guy there that I got with him. We made fiberglass horns, JBL drivers, and bingo. We had a really cool sound system. I didn't know any different. I mean, I didn't know no one was doing this, and no one had. I didn't know it. I figured they all had it. Well, not really, because they had sound systems, but they were little 4-foot columns. They weren't anything to fill a 20,000 seat arena. Well, they had a deal every Sunday, or once a Sunday in St. Louis, that would bring in artists, all kinds of artists. Dolly Parton, Joe Walsh, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buck Owens, Little Jimmy Dickens. And the managers went berserk because no one had ever heard one of these or anything like this. And of course, the entertainers loved me because they could finally have good audio in a 19,000 seat Kiel auditorium. Well, then I get a phone call a couple of years later, and it's Bales again, George Bales. He said, hey, you still have those speakers? I said, yeah. He said, did you ever get them working? I did. He said, talk to this guy. We got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, this group showed up here at 4 o'clock, and the story is they were playing in New Orleans last night. And at the end of the presentation, this band came on to St. Louis. They didn't have cell phones in those days, of course. The band came on to St. Louis, the next job. They had a little six-city tour. But they had some visitors at that show the night before. They were the FBI and the DEA because the sound man that owned the sound equipment and ran the sound, his name was Owsley, if any of you know, great history here. He was on probation, wasn't to be out of the state of California. They handcuffed him, they took all the equipment, and off they went. They show up the next day at the Fox. Where's our gear? They called back to California and found out. So George Bale says, Heil, you need to talk to this guy. Jerry GARCIA answers the phone. And I told him what I had. I had Macintosh amps, Olsen pens, JBL horns, studio mixer that we had just finished building. He said, whoa, you got to get that up here quick. I said, I can't be there before 9 o'clock or so. That's okay. So we did. If you want to follow this, put this into Google. The night rock and roll sound was born. There was somebody in the audience, I don't know who, of course, he wrote an article about it. And it's well defined. It's a piece of rock and roll history. Because, and I didn't know this, man, I just didn't know it. Here's the guy that I have never tasted beer. I've never smoked a cigarette. For gosh sakes, none of their drugs. But Pete Townsend always stood it cool. He says, leave the guy alone, man. He's got a soldering iron. He makes us sound good, and he can drive the truck. And I did. So it's just one of those things that you can't write this history. It just happens. They love the sound system. And so we went on to the rest of the tour, and it was quite fun. I do have to say, I didn't go on the whole thing, but what happened? We hit the front page of Billboard magazine, and all kinds of phone calls coming to me wanting to use that sound system. And so I would take some names, but, we were busy. Because of my ham radio, I was designing things. I designed some of the first really professional mixers. The one in the left corner is my kind of favorite. It's modular. These guys, they'd get a mixer or anything, and they would play a job and it would break. What do? You're out of luck. Well, no, not with ours. Unplug it and plug in a replacement. Same thing with the power amp. And those are some of the other things that we built. But it was just a wonderful part of my life that I didn't know what was around the corner. I really didn't. And kind of end this little session. Who is that group? Nobody ever guesses it. And I've had probably thousands of people over my life. It was the first job and the first tour of this little band from Texas, and that is ZZ Top without beards. Oh, boy. One of the things I did in all of this craziness, I became friends with these guys. If I couldn't become friends and they put all their little drugs and crap away, then I don't want to talk to you. But one thing that they did do, they respected me for what I could do for them. And when they'd come to me, they were clean. And many of these groups would come from California, New York, even England, to come to Marissa, Illinois, so I could help them. It was all about ham radio, everybody. How did I know to do that? Well, here comes the good part. I get a call one day, and the guy says, "That you, Heil?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Who this?" "That's a Clips here." And I'm going, "Paul Clips?" This is God on the other side of this. Whoa. Paul Clips was the father of hi-fi. He was the father of the folded horn. There was no one that knew more about audio than Paul Clips. He flew his little Bonanza up to see me. I figured, oh my gosh, he's going to cut me off at the knees. No, it was like he was on a mission. Well, why did you do this? How come you did it that way? Oh, why does this work? And what does this do? He wanted to know what I was doing because I didn't know it. No one was doing this kind of thing at that level. I'm just a crazy ham with a soldering iron. So we flew back to Hope, Arkansas that night. And the next day took me out to his lab, which used to be a telephone exchange building in Hope, Arkansas. And it was just unbelievable what I learned from Paul. No, not that day. The next day, I was there for 2 days. But he said, here's some things for you. And here's where it gets interesting, everybody. Paul guided me to the studies of Bell Labs. That was the idea factory in the 1920s. And Bell Labs was a consolidation of AT&T and Western Electric, which was the manufacturing arm of the Bell system. Check this out, everybody. There were 4,000 scientists and engineers assigned to the newly created Bell Telephone Labs, 4,000 of them. They were fully dedicated to researching how our ears worked. and what frequencies were most important to understand the spoken word. Well, who would ever think about it? You know, it's like, whoa. I don't ever think about those things. But the problem was that the telephone company, when they started, had a big problem. They ran 2 wires from the East Coast to the West Coast. And every 50 miles, think about this, every 50 miles across the U.S. was a relay station to keep the frequency up, to keep the level up, and on to the West Coast. Well, what happened? I mean, the telephone should have been really great, shouldn't it? Well, it wasn't. Here is what happened. When the guy in New York spoke, this is what he heard. And they're going, hey, what happened? We're having a very difficult time understanding your words. The FSPB. Wait a minute. What happened? So they called Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson. These are 2 audio scientists that worked for Bell Labs. What happened in that deal was that Fletcher-Munson did a very interesting test, and they discovered that our ears are not flat. And everybody will come to you, oh, I got flat hearing. No, you don't. Every human being has a situation. It's that situation. Your ears look, the curve looks like a ride at Disneyland. Why? Well, it's the way God made us. And everybody, each one of us, that's what we hear. You'll notice at the top when you're up around 100 dB or so, it's almost flat. So that's why kids love to listen to the music loud, because they can hear all the cymbals, all the mid-range vocals, which is very important, and of course the low end. And until that occurred, the telephone company, they didn't know. They didn't know what to do. And it was one of those things that there wasn't anything written about it at the time. So Fletcher and Munson really came about and made it happen. Well, I started doing those studies, but I got back on the air after 12 years, hadn't been on the air. What in the world happened to my Great Collins audio? Whoa, what in the world did you guys do to me? And I'd get on the air and talk to these guys, and what's wrong? And I'd change speakers and all kinds of stuff on my receiver and doing adjustments. Well, it wasn't that. You see, everything on ham radio, on phone, starts at the microphone. I'm going to unplug this. By the way, this is a very cool microphone. I'm very proud to have. We built this. We have a custom shop. We can put your call, everything on it. And the guys there did this for Charlie Daniels, the late Charlie. Charlie had about 30 some microphones, all Heil, on his stage once he heard the difference. And so they built this PR35 for him. It also is the same microphone Carrie Underwood and Keith Urban and on and on and on and on. But anyway, that's another side of it. I just thought I'd tell you because I'm pretty proud to be a great friend of many years with Charlie. Okay, I got to turn the gain up here because it's a whole different microphone and I got to put everything back to flat. That was the biggie. Okay, there we go. Huh. What are you talking on, man? I would ask these guys. Well, I'm on my new Kenwood 520, my matching microphone. Matching microphone. What's that mean? Well, it's matching. It came with the rig. It did, huh? Yeah, really. Well, it doesn't sound good. Well, Bill tells me it sounds really good every day. Well, Bill's not listening because you don't have any articulation. I can't hear any mid-range. Really? So I thought it was time for me to do something else. Let's build a microphone. And so I did. Here, we'll do this. We're not changing anything here. You know, the mixer, no. I just changed microphones. How much better can you hear me? Huh? There is no argument because I followed Dr. Fletcher, Dr. Munson, and Paul Klipsch's guidance. And it was like, man, night and day. But what I did before that, when I got back on the air, I just couldn't put up with all this stuff. So I built an equalizer. It was the first time equalization had ever been brought to ham radio. And a lot of guys are like, well, there's no EQ, get out of here. Well, if you want to sound like that flat microphone and people have a tough time hearing you and you get in a pile up and you lose, guess what? So I built an equalizer so that we can do things. If you like things with a lot of bass, we can do that. Or we really need the mid-range. Oh, do we ever? And then you balance it out. Of course, you have to balance it. But I think you really hear a huge difference when you equalize things. Well, what happened with that equalization thing was kind of interesting. I jumped gears here a little bit. I get a call in it was about 99, from Dr. Inouye, the guy that owns ICOM. He was the founder. He was going to send me something, and he sent me a picture of his station. And it was, remember the IC 781? That was the contester's dream rig. It was the first time a screen was put on a ham radio. And they had their matching microphone. It's like, what? So what we did, got together with him because he had my gold line microphone and my equalizer. And it's like, what? Dr. Inouye. He said, I'm thinking of building a new line of transmitters and I want your EQ in it. And so we worked together. And what happened? Every one of the ICOMs all have my 2-band equalizer. And as I have them all here. I have Jesus because I work for them. I'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, it was the first time anybody had thought about equalization until I came up and did that. And I didn't know. I just had ears. I have good ears because of many things, mainly voicing pipe organs. And then Paul Klipsch guiding me to what to do and what we're listening for. So all your rigs have that. Oh, the Yaesu story is kind of fun. A couple of years later, Dr. Hasegawa, who owns Yaesu, came to me at Dayton. I want to do it better. Oh, okay. So I did a parametric EQ for them. Well, you see, the 2-band shelving is nothing to worry about. It's easy. I selected 160 on the low end, 4K on the top end, me, okay? You can't change that, but you change either it's going to boost or it's going to notch at those two frequencies. And basically, those are the two. You want to get rid of that low end and you want to increase that mid-range around 2 to 3K. And that's exactly what that did. But parametric, you are the engineer. You have to pick out the frequencies. There are 3 filters in all Yaesus, all the way down from the 9,000 all the way to the new 101. They all have a 3-band parametric that I did for them. What you do there, a lot of people don't do it. And many times I'll ask somebody that's got a Yaesu, are you in the default mode? Yeah. And I just go, ah. You have the most incredible tool in your radio and you don't know how to use it because you haven't been told. I told Hasagawa before we did this, I said, you're going to have a real problem. He said, what? I said, education. Oh, no, we take care of it. Well, he didn't. We did. If you go to our website, there's a page in our website that says all things Yaesu, all things ICOM, all things Elecraft. There are, oh, I don't know. There's about 60, 70 pages that help you with each of these rigs. Some of them have pictures and a picture of the Kenwood stuff. And it helps you. And if all else fails, why, send me an email. But anyway, 3 bands. So you're going to have to select 3 frequencies. You know you're going to get rid of the low end. I know. There's going to be some of you say, oh, hi, I got that hi-fi single sideband. You do. Oh, isn't it great? No, it isn't, because I can't understand what in the world you're saying. Because you don't have any mid-range. Remember what Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson told us? It just boggles my mind that they want to ruin a signal. Oh, if you want to do that, get on AM. But anyway, you take that low filter, you put it about 160. Then you have a bandwidth. I usually do an octave. That means it'll cover everything from 320 down to 80, an octave, right? That's the first filter, 160. Second filter, I like to do up around 1,000, 1,200. Depends on the room, the microphone, the voice, same deal. But the all important one is the third one, and that one is set where? 2.5K. And you want that little baby through the 3 octaves, and you want to boost the heck out of it. But listen to it, because you want to really balance. That's one of the problems with equalization. You want to balance the highs and the lows, but you don't want the lows to be bleh, as I just proved to you. The other thing that we have to look at is pattern. Pattern of a microphone is so important, very important. And let me get something here. And you don't hear about it. That's what ticks me off. That's why I did this. Our microphones are terrible. They're not built by those people. I know, I work for them. They're built by a OEM Chinese company, put their name on it, painted the same color, and guess what? It's matching. No, it's not. The Element are sucky, every one of them. Well, Bill said I sound fine. Yeah, but he hasn't heard how really good you could sound. Because it all starts at the microphone. And the pattern is so important. You want a pattern that's doesn't have anything behind it. Power focus. You ever heard of that? Probably not. But if the Element is designed right, all of the power focus is going to be forward and very little to nothing behind. But that's difficult to do. We have done that. We have done that because we don't want to be flat. We already know that. But the thing about the power focus is interesting. I have a great demo. If you haven't learned anything yet, you're about to. You're never going to forget the next 5 minutes ever. There are some other things I'm going to come up to here in just a little bit, but I guarantee you, you are never going to forget what I'm about to do. I have 2 microphones, and these 2 microphones are identical. What I'm going to do to hook them up so there's no games being played, I'm going to unplug this. Okay, there we go. We have two of our PR22s, a very important microphone for us. Keith Urban, no, Paul Rogers, I'll get it right, of Bad Company asked me years ago, I want a microphone that, first of all, I don't have to worry about my audio guy. He doesn't know how to set it anyway. So we did it. I mean, I didn't change the EQ, and it's really quite cool just the way it is. And that's what he wanted. But let's say you're not making the pile up with your matching microphone. What could you do? Well, I know. We'll go buy a kilowatt. Okay? I'm running 500 watts. I'm going to double my power. Whoa. Do you know how many decibels it's going to increase on the receiver of the receiving station? 3. Now, this is the science of it. I even have some people argue with me. Well, okay, argue with science. It's 3 dB. Do you know how loud 3 dB is? Check it out. If I double my input, my meters go up 3 decibel. They're both the same. So if I bring this guy up to here, bingo, it's going to get a whole lot louder, right? So here we go. Listen, I told you listening is an art. And here goes 3 dB. Hello? What happened here? What happened? Oh, they still work, but not together. Why? Huh. These do because they're in phase. I just changed them to in phase. Now let's do this again. I'm going to bring this up 3 dB. See if you can hear it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 3. You can't detect a 3 dB difference. The human being can't detect it unless we were in an anecho chamber and, $1 million scientific experiments, but not for you, I, or anybody with just a regular old ham shack. It can't happen. You wasted your money. And let me tell you what to do with that money. You take that $2,000 or $3,000 that you thought was going to help you a whole lot, give it to your wife so she can go buy more purses and shoes. Yay! I'm telling you, it works. I know, firsthand. I'm telling you. This isn't really the test I wanted to bring to you, but I always like to do it because a lot of people don't know how loud doubling your power is. Do you know, I proved to you a minute ago, I can get you 10 dB just by changing microphones. We'll get into that again, but here we go. I have this marvelous little plug, and I'm going to plug it into the back of this microphone. Pin 3 is hooked to 2, and 2 is hooked to 3, okay? It's backwards. When I speak into this microphone right now, the element goes down. My breath causes it to go down because it's in phase and everybody's happy. But when this one worked, oh, wait a minute, it sounds just like that one. But this element's going this way. Wow. Well, they both sound the same. What's the big deal, Heil? When you put them together, what do you get? Nothing. They don't work. Nothing. Oh, I'm still talking. It won't work, but together, they're out of phase. Oh my God, I wish we had 2 or 3 hours. This is my favorite subject. of the most popular microphones for us today in ham radio is the PR781. It's an amazing microphone. Okay, get ready. You might want to take notes for this. One of the things I wanted to do was build a microphone where we could do things with the audio as Bell Labs had told us. And the fact that your transmitter's only 2.9 wide, unless you're some of these guys that get 4 and 5 and 6K and don't give a damn about their neighbor. Take up the bandwidth. Tell them to go away. No, don't do that. Respect your neighbor. 3K, that's it. 3K. I know. I get flamed for this. People really scream at me because, oh, we'll do what we want. Well, yeah, but think about your neighbors. Think about your neighbors. So what we want to do here is do something with the microphones that can help you a little bit. Roll off that low end. Put all the power between 2 and 3K. That's where the power should be. I proved it to you a while ago. And that's why all of our microphones are like that. Our new HC7 element in the Pro 7 is an amazing element. Look where all the power is. And you're probably saying, what are you talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is you only have so much RF. And that RF is right here. But if you had a way of causing that RF to do that, now look what happens. You can get 10, 15 dB by changing a microphone, by changing equalization, by changing antennas. This is not a darn magic act. This is the science of all of this, but nobody talks about it. Good grief. This is the real deal, everybody. And the HC7 is just marvelous because it does that for you. And the headset, I'm so proud. This took a lot of work. There have been several of these David Clark followers, but they're pretty poor because they're not audio guys. They don't listen. They haven't been through the school of Paul Klipsch. What I did thinking about the DXpeditions, first of all, for everybody, there's a balance control left to right. If you have a situation where you're hard of hearing in one ear or the other. The element by the boom can go either way, and the elements are interchangeable. I have an IC element in it or a dynamic. IC for ICOM. Dynamics will not work on ICOM, not very well. We developed a special element at the invitation of ICOM, and it's wonderful. Here comes the good part. Paul Klipsch taught me years ago how to take a speaker outside in free air and do a cone resonance. You find out where that cone's resonant, then you build the enclosure at that frequency. Well, I did the same thing here. I'd always wanted to do it, but I didn't have the room. The speaker is sitting about right here. So look how far away it is from your ear, number one. But it's in this cavity, and we've treated the inside. And the other thing about it is it's so very comfortable. You see how it sits on my head. I have so many guys say, well, that thing's going to be really uncomfortable. No, it's not. We got DXpeditions that go for 24 hours and they play with this, and it's great. One thing I like to always tell everybody, I'll see people on eHam say, oh, that darn Heil headset hurts my ears. He didn't read the instructions. Every one of my headsets is a steel band. So if you need to bend it, don't worry, you're not going to break it. Or you got a pinhead like me, you can do this. All of our headsets do that. And last but not least, and also so important, we're the only company on the planet for about 12 years that put phase reversal in a headset. What in the world would somebody put phase reversal for? Well, if you hear a pileup and you got some little weaky guy back here, reverse the phase, and he's up here. You can move the signals around in your head acoustically. And it's just an amazing, amazing thing. Again, I don't understand why everybody is not with this project. I don't know. But phasing is so important. I mean, you have to think about what's happened. How did Wes Shum get rid of the carrier when he brought single sideband to us? How did he get rid of the other sideband? When some idiot drives up to you and lands on your frequency because he doesn't respect you, how do you get rid of him? The notch filter puts him out of phase and he's gone. I just proved it to you. How does your Yagi work? Noise canceling headphones. All of this has to do with phasing. When Dr. Yagi built the first Yagi, he did this all by calculations. The director, the length of it, the distance from the driven, the reflector, it's longer, all that. You can get 10, 15 dB out of an antenna. Whoa. How come nobody talks about this? Well, I always knew about phased arrays. But when you say that, you're thinking, oh my gosh, you're talking $2,000. No, it's about, I think it cost me $23. I live, Sarah and I had a home in the Ozarks the past 10 years. We just moved back here. Well, we haven't left here. This is our home. We're just about 12, 15 miles east of the Great Arch of downtown St. Louis in Belleville, Illinois, not very far from Scott Air Force Base. And we've been here, well, she's been here since 84. Anyway, we just had that for 10 years, the second home. But it had 5 acres. Yay! Here's what I did, and I want you to pay attention. You need to build a phased array. Installation of a 75-meter phased array antenna system consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG213. In order to make the antennas directly from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43 foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried. And just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. Take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after I get done mowing it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm going to have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it because, if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it gets looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
the system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
Hey, Sue. Yeah, well, I see they introduced a big display on it, and I don't know if that is their form of portable, or what that is. Your wire that hooked up to your computer, and then did you use your handheld to go through it?
Here's some great sounding AM stations, and we were getting about 20 dB front to back.
Well, when the leaves drop off, I'll start using it. Daryl, purchasing digital recorder, I need to do that too. That'd be nice to have. And I was going to mention to you too about your pictures with Fifi. I'd sent that out to a few friends, and one of my cousins that was.
Well, we were talking about you yesterday with Brian. Brian, you know, the thought was that you could locate that remote receiver out at Brian's QTH. And
I hope that you got something out of that. Phasing is such an incredible thing, and yet you don't hear a lot about it. You know, oh, it's there, but nobody understands it. And to do that, my gosh, it is so simple. That little delay line, that's the key. That's all the expense, just regular dipoles. I like to use coaxial dipoles, but where are the guys helping us? They don't seem to care. Well, I took the phasing to a new level. Joe Walsh asked me one time, he said, Heil, why don't you build me a microphone that I don't have to just stand right in front of it? You know, you've seen them. You've seen the entertainers. They're just right on that microphone. They can't get off of it. Why? Because their pattern's terrible. They don't care. Those microphones you see were designed almost 60 years ago. That's ridiculous. The SM58s and RE20s, all that. Check this out. And again, this is all because of phasing. All because somebody wanted it. What I did for Joe is I built the PR40 first. And instead of having 4 little holes around like 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9, that's what everybody else has. That's all they have for rear rejection that is out of phase. Well, that's not enough. So being a ham radio operator, this is what I did. I opened the entire bottom of that element. And another thing about the element, we were the first people to be able to build a large dynamic. Shure failed. Their engineer came to me a couple years later. Said, how'd you do that? Well, I did it because I just marched on. Lots and lots and lots of experiment, and I found out what the deal was. But I opened the whole bottom end of that. You'll notice the bottom of that element is open, not 3 little holes. And I put it on top of what I call a signal collection tube inside this microphone. Now, all these different frequencies come roaring up the side into the bottom, out of phase. And it is absolutely an amazing thing what happened when I did it. Every microphone you can buy maybe have 20 dB. Well, we have 40. It's not there. Oh, it still works, but it's gone. It's gone because all of this stuff is coming up out of phase. The broadcasters loved it. Sirius Radio just bought almost 300 of them, got rid of their RE20s. That's just one. I mean, so many broadcasters, podcast markets in love with the PR40. I didn't know what was going to happen. I really didn't. So these again are things that ham radio has brought to me. And I just, you know, there's so many things we can talk about with it, but to tell you what you need to do and help you understand these are the type of meetings we need to have. I also got involved in the IC element. We build elements for ICOM. ICOM has a very special front end. They don't have very much gain. And that all started back in the 60s when they came over here. The first rig was an IC 701, 720, 730. They didn't have preamps in them. Think about this. Think about it. It didn't have a preamp. What'd they do? Put it inside a stupid hand mic. What? That's what they did. Well, over the years, things have gotten better. And then when we got together with Dr. Inouye, we started building, we call it IC. They're not dynamic elements. They won't work on your Kenwood. They won't work on your Yaesu. They only work on ICOM. That's why I call it the IC element. So all of our microphones are either dynamic or IC elements. You'll see it. This is a new one we just came out with for the guys that are backpacking, or just a nice little headset. But this one is an IC, so that only works on ICOM. But we also make it with the regular dynamic. We also had a lot of requests from everybody about headsets for handhelds. You know, these things are a scourge. The microphones for them are just terrible. Well, not anymore. And you know, a lot of thought in this little baby, and it's very, very inexpensive. So I'm really proud of some of these things that we have done, and we're continuing to build things and make things happen. I have one more thing. There's so many other things we could talk about, but I want to remind you how to use your microphone. I hear so many guys on the air, and once in a while I'll even break in and nicely see what they're doing, because they sound like they're in a gymnasium, because they take their microphone on a stand, a desk stand, they put it down here. Oh, Heil, you're stupid. Just turn up the gain. Oh, really? Okay. Now what do you got? Well, you got yourself a whole bunch of echo. And this room is a studio for my organ, which is in here. And I record from here. So this is not a very live room, but still it has a honky sound when you do that. Check me out. Don't forget this. You can never be further than 2 inches, ever. It's why I brought booms to this hobby. I was the first people, oh God, Heil Sound back in the 80s brought booms into ham radio. So you see, things are there. You just have to learn to use them. And you also always don't forget, you want to use a pop filter. Many of our microphones, this being one of them, we have pretty sufficient filtering, and those are acoustical. That's another problem. Guys will go down and buy some cheap thing at Walmart or whatever. No. They have to be acoustically transparent. So when you put it on the microphone, it does not change the microphone quality. But some of these cheap guys will. We make sure that we don't do that. But I'm really excited about what's going on in the broadcast industry. Almost all these guys now have done off-site work, and they're not tearing down the studios, so they're buying PR40s like crazy. We're very blessed that we're able to keep our distance, and by keeping the people apart and doing different shifts. We even work on Saturday, Sunday, because we need to have the products. But okay, I'm going to take about 2 minutes. I have one other thing that you are never going to forget, and you probably want to go to the Heil Sound page, the store page, and buy it. Nobody's ever done this, ever. What are we talking about? Well, I've worked for, 45 years building ham radio things, all kinds of stuff. Joe Walsh wanted me building a microphone that looked like the front end of a 48 Pontiac. If you know anything about Joe, he's cool. Well, guess who uses this other than Joe? ZZ Top. They love it because I put LEDs in it and it lights up. If you don't have fun, don't get in front of me. I wanted to do something for your receiver because nobody else has. Oh, we build a matching speaker. Oh my God. Oh yeah. It's powered. Oh yeah. It's a junky little speaker, has no quality. It's not tuned. Well, Paul Klipsch, he anointed me years ago. We built what we call the parametric receive audio system. The speaker is amazing. It's got our own speaker in it. All of our speakers are white cone, 3.5-inch titanium tweeter. It has a 25 watt at 0.1% distortion. Everything you have, I don't care if it's a $10,000 transceiver. I don't care if it's a $15,000. I don't care if it's $400. The amplifier in that receiver is 1 watt, maybe 2 on some of them, and 10% distortion. Oh my God, I cannot stand distortion because I listen so intently, and it drives me crazy to hear distortion. And it does you too when you learn to listen, dissect what you're hearing up in these harmonics, because they come back to haunt you if they're there. So I built this system, the parametric receive audio system. It has wonderful abilities. The mids are parametric, so I can change the parameters. You are the engineer. The highs, those sitting at 100 at 6K, and the lows at 160 hertz. I have a little thing I did off air the other day, and let's see if you can hear some of this.
30 words a minute, so
here's a
I
D104.
speeded up the tape, and sure enough, I can copy it.
Here it is. Now this is flat, the way you hear him. Listen what happens when I put some mid-range in it.
Lima Bravo, EIATLB calling about 4 Sierra Germany.
Back to flat. That's the way you hear him.
India Alpha Mike, over.
I'm going to increase 2 point. All I'm doing is 2.5K.
Echo India 8 Bravo.
Back to flat without the EQ. That's the way you hear him.
There are a couple of usual single sideband signals that are mushy and bassy, difficult to understand.
We're at flat.
You can add some speech articulation just by adding some 2.5 mid-range.
Of the 2 meter, a sideband, but they're just not, it's not the same as a rig built, just for 2 meter sideband. The receivers will never compare. So it's kind of nice that, again, ICOM technology. They were nice enough in my county, which was the worst, by the way, paid in the area. They gave me 5 years seniority, but I was basically starting at the bottom. So
back to
many
flat.
times people who spend 20 years in the Navy or whatever the military is and retire, people say, well, you got it made. No, you don't.
This is all highs. It's a D104. So we're going to put some lows in it.
I thought, well, I wonder if I can copy that at about 30 words a minute, and so I speeded up the tape, and sure enough, I can copy it.
There it is, back to
I
flat.
had a lot of fun
There's
the
some
other night.
low end.
I thought, well, I wonder if I can copy that at about 30 words a minute, and so
It's all about EQ. No argument. Also, I have not one but 2 very low distortion headphone amplifiers. So you can have a logger and an operator, or, and this has really become popular, you can we have a Y cable. You can plug the left side and the right side. So if you have a hearing imbalance, dial up what you need. That is a record out. That's how I made that recording. It's always tough to make recordings, not anymore. And it's just, all these things really mean something. And it's stuff that I do here. I'm playing around every day, and I come up with this stuff. And last but not least, what I despise is one thing you're probably never thinking about, and that's the cable. Oh my gosh. You go look at your matching microphone. The cables are terrible. They're 26 gauge. And when you take the shield apart, look what happens to the shield, you know. Well, here, our shield is 100% silver braid. When you pick it apart, you don't end up with two little strands, you end up with all of it. But here's the most important part. It's 18 gauge, not 24, and it's 2. Why do I do 2? For balanced line. If we had another hour, we'd get into that, because all of the new transceivers have balanced line, but zero of the manufacturers tell you that. It's kind of a secret way you got to hook it up. And balanced line, why do we want balanced line? Because they're out of phase from each other. I have solved more RFI problems just by giving them how to secretly wire it and have those two out of phase. And more important, and this always ticks me off, you notice those audio leads, which are AC, are inside that shield. What's the blue and the red? They're carrying DC for your push to talk. Well, the microphone cable you have and the manufacturers, they put it all in one shield. So there you got DC and AC laying together. RFI generator. Why? I don't know why. It just bugs me because it's so simple. And the connectors are terrible. They have a little bitty ring. You almost have to have needle nose to get in sometime. Ours is about a little over 5/8 thick, so you can spin her on there real quick. But look at the cable clamp. When I developed the cable, it's very flexible, but I made it and the cable clamp work together. So when we clamp those two screws down, you could tow your car with that. Very, very cool stuff. What's that other one leading out? That's your push to talk line. It never goes inside that audio line. And we have a hand switch and other kinds of things for it. But it just, gosh, they're so important. They're just little things, and none of these guys want to do it. And it just bugs me. Why do they not want to do it? I do hope you guys and gals are watching Ham Nation on Wednesdays. We have a lot of things like this going on, and we're always trying to help everybody. But I have so many things. I'm just really glad that you allowed me to be here. We'll come back and really dive into the subjects, and we've just grazed over them. I'm very proud, blessed, and honored. I received an honorary PhD degree from Missouri U here a couple of years back. And it was kind of interesting because I barely made it through high school. And I told the curator that, and he asked me how I felt. And I said, I'm so blessed. But I said, man, I hardly have any background in school. He said, yeah, but it took you 50 years to get this PhD. I never thought about it, but it's true. And then last but not least, Heil Sound a few years ago was put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're the only manufacturer in the Rock Hall. There's all kinds of artists, but the curator said, you know what? These guys wouldn't be here if they didn't have anybody building their gear. And they selected us because we were the innovators when it all started with big PAs. That mixer you see behind me was something that I built at the invitation of Pete Townsend. He called me over to his studio in London after we had done 2 years of the Who's Next tour. He said, you know, right now, quad sound is big. You think we could build a system that you can move it around the hall? And I said, yeah, we can do that. No is not in my vocabulary, by the way. And we did. we were just in the midst of building this console in the UK with our sister company, IES. And so we could expand it and get 4 channels out. The speaker behind me, the white one, that's one of the fiberglass monitors of many, many speakers back there. And amplifiers and all kinds of stuff like that. The white speaker also, we have a lot of monitors. We were the guys that brought monitors to Rock and Roll Sound. What are you talking about, monitors? It started with the Grateful Dead. They can't hear the PA. And if they do, the PA is not working. It's very quiet on the stage. And if they're singing and they want to hear each other, they can't do it. So I built monitors. But I built some very cool monitors. But everybody tried it. There for a couple of years. It was just absolutely incredible, crazy. But I built a monitor system that worked. Look how close John Entwistle is to all those. I think that was about 2,000 watts in his ear. How come it didn't feed back? You already know the answer, don't you? Because they were out of phase. And it worked. And then, oh my God, everybody came to me going, what are you doing? How'd you do that? Well, ham radio works every time. And, it's just crazy. One other thing that I know all of you probably know about is that. This is kind of what brought us to prominence, the talk box. And that was done with Joe Walsh and Peter Frampton. I did it for Joe first. But here's an interesting story. God, there's so much and I'm running over time, but that's the way it goes sometimes with me. You remember what this is? Do you know what it is? It's a microphone for a World War II pilot. Because microphones, man, the cockpits were so noisy. So they would put these little buttons on their throat and pick up their vocal cords. Well, in 1939, Alvino Ray, W6UH, how come it is that all these innovations are crazy hams? You ever think about that? We could do a whole show on that. You wouldn't have televisions, you wouldn't have VCRs, you wouldn't have a lot of things. Anyway, Alvino put this on his wife's throat behind a curtain. He was the guitarist, and she was one of the vocalists, and the King sisters. Remember the King sisters? But he didn't use this as an input. He put his guitar amp in here. So it modulated her voice. And as she sang behind a curtain, it sounded like his guitar was talking. That all lay dormant until 1950 when Pete Drake, who was a steel guitar player in Nashville, had a great studio. He did a little bitty speaker and a funnel and all this. Joe used that to do Rocky Mountain Way. But when Joe and I started putting his Barnstorm together, which is his solo entrance to the industry, how are we going to do that talk box thing loud? So Joe and I got together, playing around with all the other stuff we do, and built the talk box. It's a 100-watt driver and has a high-pass filter and all that in it. But I never quit because I love this hobby. I love sharing this hobby. You can always contact me. I get sometimes a couple of hundred emails a day, and I answer them. Sometimes it might be a day or so, but I get to you. I never leave them, ever. And a lot of times I'll call you if you have your phone, or I'd love to get on Skype, and then we can really do it. Be sure and check out the website. There's a lot of stuff there. I appreciate you invited me. I know I've run this thing in the ground for you, but gosh, I hope you learned something. I hope I get to come back, pick just one subject and really get into it. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. It's awesome. Thank you so much for coming to our club, and it's been a great talk. We really appreciate you taking the time and also sharing all of during the presentation, I did put in a lot of the links, and people can check those out as they.
Yeah, that'll work. You want to go 2 minutes more?
Sure.
What about that?
Oh, awesome. Yes, thank you.
I can bring that up and play a couple of minutes if you'd like to.
That would be great.
Don't want to bore anybody, but that's what I'm looking at. It's about 20 feet in front of me here.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Go do that. Hope it wasn't too loud. Got you. Hear it all right.
It
It
was
was perfect. Did
absolutely
you play
awesome.
yourself off?
Yeah, you can see a little bit. There's a shelf we built when I built this. All the speakers are up there. There's 10 speakers and 2 subwoofers, and that's where all that's coming from. The organ is a digitally sampled Wurlitzer, and it is an amazing instrument. I'm very happy and proud to have it. I do a show every Saturday at I think 7 o'clock. They play it on WTWW. It goes around the world. It's a 200,000 watt shortwave station, so you might want to listen in. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, I got time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dr. Bob. So if somebody has a question for Dr. Bob, please raise your hand now and we'll get you in. Sam.
Dr. Bob, was that the Wurlitzer theater console?
Oh, I missed it. What was that?
Was that a theater console?
It is, exactly. It's an exact copy of a Wurlitzer, 3-manual, 24 rank. But everything you heard was sampled. It was an amazing thing that Alan Organ did. It was sampled 24 different instruments around the country.
We used to have a place in Bellevue, Washington called Pizza and Pipes. It was a pizza parlor with a Wurlitzer theater set up, pipes and all.
Yep, that's what this is, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
Mark.
you.
Mark, W7EAZ.
Hi, Bob, Mark here. It appeared as though your image may have been reversed because you went left to go high and right to go low. Is that right? Did I see that right? That's because I'm a piano tuner and I know which way the pianos go.
I don't know. Not that I know of. I think it's
Okay.
Okay. I'll have
And John, we have a question from John, KJ7KSX. John, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Dr. Bob. Thanks so much. Really appreciate what you did for us, and I love Ham Nation. I just have a quick question. I love what you were saying about microphones and being able to tweak to get 10 to 15 decibels increase out of that as opposed to cranking up with an amplifier. But if I have, let me know if I have that right. But I'm wondering about your Heil HC7, the Dream Machine. Are you suggesting adding that on as well to get further increase in?
Guys, especially the D expeditions, they want fewer boxes than possible. They want plug and play, and that's what that does for you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one more question from Calvin Doss. Calvin, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Bob. I have a different question, not just ham radio related here, but out of all the people you met some incredible people. Who's the one that really impressed you the most?
That's hard to say. Probably Paul Klipsch. I worked with, I didn't get into my home theater stuff. We were a leader in home theaters back, started really in the late 70s. We were doing the satellite stuff. I put in several thousand 10-foot dishes, stuff like that. And then I got into home theater because of the audio. And I worked at Skywalker Ranch teaching with Tom Holman, who invented or developed THX, and just on and on and on. But Ray Dolby, we brought his first ProLogic prototype to the masses. And I was on the test team for DirecTV. I put in the first DirecTV dish in a house and saw that. But all of these people, Paul Klipsch, Dolby, Tom Holman, how do you pick one of those? And then I have to look at what I learned from the entertainers. Joe, being a ham, would always give me some good, thoughtful things, and Peter Frampton, and even Jerry Garcia would come to Marissa from California and spend a day, and we'd toss ideas out, and it helped me learn more about what we needed to hear, how we needed to hear it, and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things that we just have to pay attention when people are placed in front of us, because they're all giants in my eye. You can learn something from everybody, even if it's bad. It's a good example.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was the most entertainment I've had in a long time. Sure needed that. Just a good time for it.
Thank you.
Yep. We have time for a couple more. It looks like David has his hand up, and then Sam after that.
Well, not to be cliche, a long-time listener, first-time caller, but so if you were to look into your crystal ball, Bob, and 5 years from now, what would be the thing that would have changed with regard to audio or anything else ham radio, in your opinion?
I don't know. I don't want it to change. It's incredibly good. I don't want digital stuff to take over, because digital audio is not like good old analog. I'm an analog freak. And Joe wrote a song called An Analog Man in a Digital World. If you have never heard it, go look it up and play it. It's cool, because he says it right there, the lyrics to that song. But I don't know. We're going to do different bodies and do different ways of doing it, but it's still going to be analog for me, guaranteed, because our ears don't change.
Okay, Sam, you have another question, and then we'll get to Joan after that.
Quick question. I spent 12 years as a customer interface with the telephone industry. And of course, when you're talking telephone lines, everything is done in DVR and C for C message filtering. Did you ever get that in the C message filtering?
No, I didn't. No, but I understand what they did, but I didn't do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan, go ahead.
I just have to say, Bob Heil, that you're one of my heroes. And another hero is Brian Eno, especially as a producer. And as far as digital versus analog goes, one of my favorite quotes is when Brian Eno, when asked about why he was still recording on his Revox or whatever, when people were going digital, and he says, when analog fails, it fails gracefully. And when digital fails, or he said it the other way, when digital fails, it fails utterly. But when analog fails, it fails gracefully.
That's right. That's right. No, I don't have a camera on it, but about 2 feet here is my my wonderful Kai that I do a lot of recording on, and yeah, I do some on Audacity, but most of it's done on 7-inch reel. Why not? Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. And I do want to remind everybody to check into the Ham Nation. It's an awesome program on YouTube and Twit TV, and sometimes they have Joe Walsh and other people in there. It's just a great show. So I really appreciate, and we'll try to schedule Dr. Bob in sometime in 2021 to go down another awesome presentation. I really appreciate you, Dr. Bob.
What you want to do is you want to pick out a subject or two and you will focus on those. We don't need to go into the history. You guys know it. But if we want to get into the other things, let me know and we'll cover them. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Okay. We'll carry on from here and be good and
stay safe.
Remember how to listen.
Good deal. All righty, I am going to stop the recording there.